necessity is the mother of invention. We are at Alexander Graham Bell School, and we had the wonderful opportunity today to talk about
living sustainably.
Absolutely, and it was so awesome. We got to talk to little kids and really open their minds, and it was really cool to be able to get them to be thinking in an environmentally sustainable fashion, especially because the fact that they are the Earth Guardians. Yes.
Yep. Setting up our children for success in a world of climate change is the subtitle of what we're talking about today. So I hope you guys enjoy. My name is Eric Anderson. I'm a native garden ecologist, and I've done a bunch of work here at Alexander Graham Bell with their pollinator garden. It's had 4 growing seasons, and we're looking forward to more.
And this is MWRD Commissioner Dan Pogozelski. Hope you enjoy.
All right, so the first step in looking at gardening and turning your yard, converting yards, say, into native plants, is knowing what is your soil, what is your sunlight, what is your moisture level, and then to start thinking about plants, okay? Don't get caught up on the last one until you first have a little bit of understanding of what your first one is, okay? Assuming that most of us live around in the Bell School footprint or in the general vicinity of Chicago, we probably have either heavy clay as soil that's like impossible to do much with, and it holds water, or we have sand, or we have some combination of there was construction here and they just put it all underneath the soil. If you go over near Revere Park, some of those houses in there, I think it used to be a place that they just dumped stuff, because that's what used to happen when there was a hole. They just filled it with garbage. So anyway, but soil can be complicated, and if you have different types of soil, it can really impact what kind of plants can grow there, okay? Also, knowing about the sunlight. How much sunlight do we have? If we look at our garden at Bell, there are some things that we purposely planted on the south end where we know it's going to get a lot more direct sun. Those are plants that can take a little more of a beating from the sun. Also, they really need that hot and direct sunlight. Whereas over to the in the very north, sometimes it gets quite a bit less. So moisture level as well, dry plants, wet plants, it really varies. Our goal is we don't want to long-term have to water something like this, okay? All right, site preparation. You guys, most of you guys, I don't know if you were here in the fall of 2019 when we started doing site preparation, or if any of you might remember when the multi-purpose room was first built. Okay, so when they first built the multi-purpose room, there was some landscaping that was put out there, and there was no real gardening done. They put in some plants, and I'm like, oh, these are nice. They have some native plants in there and some native shrubs. This will be all right. But then it became the king of the hill and the place to kick the soccer ball up that it would then come back at you, and it died pretty quickly. So site preparation, now this is something that we would do in our own lawn. I did this in Miss Perlmutter's house when we were figuring out, okay, what are we going to do there? The first thing you have to do is kill what's living there. If you notice, the grass is on the uphill side here that Jermaine is pushing the dingo with is dead. We killed all that grass first. We wanted to make sure it was good and dead before we then started to turn the soil over. Now, we're usually reluctant. I'm personally reluctant to do too much overturning of soil and to really till it up, because you're just going to stir up the seed bank that's in there, okay? So imagine all the weeds and everything that's blown in, all that seed bank is there, and if you dig it up too much, you kind of open that up to the sunlight, and it can still be kind of a weed problem. Now, in this area over here, we used compost, okay? Something I like to call MWRD gold. It is solids that have been composted with wood chips from the wastewater treatment plant, and it is the most beautiful soil or soil amendment that you can add in. Well, because we got it for free, we used a lot of it, and we didn't really mix it with other soil, which I knew could be a problem long term, but for the time being, it worked out really well, and it's still working really well. What that means, though, is it doesn't have a lot of clay and stuff in the soil, so it tends to kind of dry out kind of fast. Also, it's up, elevated a little bit, so again, it can dry out kind of fast, but I know that once our native plants get established, they can handle the the dries and the wets that we have throughout our season. So site preparation is really important. Long term, a quick thing that happened here about site preparation, on the right where we filled in with like 18 inches of that compost, I had almost no weeds. There was almost no weeding at all over there, versus over here on the left where we just kind of came in, tilled it over, and then we put like 2 inches of compost on top of it. In that area, the first year, thankfully it was the pandemic. So that was my pandemic project, was weeding at Bell, because, well, what else are we gonna do, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. And then planting with plugs or planting with seeds. There are, what is your budget and how patient are you? All right. Generally, if we're talking about planting in a yard or in a small patch, I highly recommend using plugs of plants, just because you're going to get something that's going to come up in that first year or two, and you're going to be able to see what's happening like right away. You're going to be able to identify your plants. One problem starting with seeds, if you're brand new and starting with native gardening, is when the plant is this tall, it's really hard to identify. Now, I spend most of my days during the summer identifying plants that are about this big, okay? Because it's one of the things I do. I don't expect everyone here to be able to do that, okay? So starting with a little bit bigger, but there are a few species, which we'll see some a little later, and that they can start from seed really easily, and they'll come up and they'll bloom in the first year. Next slide, please. Also, start small. Learn as you go. This is in front of my apartment building shortly after I moved in there in about 2014, something like that. I had a packet of about 15 plants that I got from a native plant sale, or it was like a giveaway at some conservation thing that I went to that I won in a drawing. About 15 plants in there, and I put them in, and I had something small, and that's where I started. This garden has now grown. Another thing that happens though, your plants are going to die. It's unfortunate, but they will. Sometimes because it's an annual. They only come up 1 year, and if they don't go to seed, then they go. Or it's, you know what? It doesn't like this site. When I thought, oh, this is a great spot. I've got good dark soil in here, and I dug down, and I found out that 2 inches below the surface, it looked like a sandbox. There was nothing in there nutrient-wise. Like, wow, okay, some of these are wet-loving plants, and I'm putting them in a desert. So we'll see how that goes. And sure enough, some of the plants, they didn't survive very well. Also, I found that if it's right next to a sidewalk, you know, people walk their dogs. Dogs are curious, and they'll just walk right into it. So a little bit of a fence around it to keep a dog out, you know, is also, I learned, is really important. If nothing else, it helps people realize that, oh, this isn't a place I'm supposed to let my dog walk into. So always involve small hands as we're all learning to grow, okay? Involve the people that are with you. This is, there will always be maintenance. I love the thought of the amount of maintenance that we need to do at our native garden here at Bell is nowhere near as much as it was in that very first year, because we've got our weeds mostly under control. Now a lot of our time is focused on trimming certain things back. But there's always going to be maintenance, and it's really nice to know that the small hands understand what's a weed and what's a flower, okay? As much as you can too, learn the names of the plants that are there. If you don't have to learn the botanical names, but learning the common names is also, it's great, okay?
And the kids who help plant the plants protect them at recess.
Exactly. That's another great thing about it. So weeds happen, as I mentioned before, but good site preparation helps, and helping to identify what's a weed and what's not a weed. Usually at any one time we go out, there's like, oh, here's one particular weed that's a problem. We have a big Siberian elm tree that likes to drop little seedlings, and when they start to grow, it's pretty easy to show the kids, okay, see this one here? You see how the leaves are shaped like that? Okay, that's the one we're getting at. 2 fingers, pull them out. Whole lot easier to pull out 2 fingers than it is to worry about taking out a massive tree. So one solution to weeding, or one temporary solution, I'll say, is mulch. So to mulch or not to mulch, all right? Often we will see people have just covered everything. Well, nothing grows here, so we're just going to put mulch. Well, nothing grows there because you don't have imagination and you're not planting the right plants, for one, or it's really close to a walkway and it's just getting walked all over, all right? The reason we used mulch here was, again, because we had all this open soil. Nature does not like an empty palette. If there is open, exposed soil, it will fill it in with something, all right? On the very south end, there were a lot of weeds there. The mulch does help keep it down. Now, why would we not want to use mulch? Anybody know why we would not want to use mulch? Guys, any idea? How come?
It might be a little bit hard for the plants to like sprout up. Yep, that's definitely one reason. We are relying on, in a garden like this, we're relying on things to start from seed, for the seed to hit the ground and then to start growing. But if they have the mulch, they are also precluded from being able to grow. All right. Another reason: who makes their nest in a natural habitat like this, that underground? There might even be a sign for it. Yeah. Bees, ground nesting bees. Did you know that 80% of native bees in Illinois are ground nesting bees? Okay. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to get a massive, bald-faced hornet's nest living in your little your place. But I have seen in Bell, I have seen small bees that come and they will dig into the soil and put themselves in there. These are bees that might only be up and flying for 2 to 3 weeks during the year. It's a really short lifespan that they have. It's usually associated with some of the native plants, but they're there. When you have mulch, thick layers of mulch, it's really hard for them to get in and utilize that habitat. Okay, so it's a nice thing in the beginning as we're getting started, but it's not something we want to necessarily keep on there year in and year out. The second year I had to unmulch after our gracious contractor did us such a solid of putting 6 inches of mulch on top of everything. Wow. Communication, okay? Lots of good communication, super important. So through the seasons, here we are. This is early in spring. Stuff has come up, and this just kind of keep flipping through here. I tried to take photos at this one point just to kind of remember, like, okay, throughout the year, keep flipping there and keep going. We got one color of yellow. Oh, now we've got, so this is a bunch of black-eyed Susan, okay? I talked about some of those plants you want to start from seed, okay? Black-eyed Susan is an annual, and it likes disturbed sites. So when I'm doing a restoration, I will often include black-eyed Susan as seed that will broadcast over the area. It likes the full sun. It needs full sun. It can handle dry conditions. I've had it before, even at Bell, where, oh my gosh, it looks like it's shriveling up and dying. Oh no, what are we going to do? But then it rained, and guess what? It just kind of woke back up and kept going. And if it didn't make it up to bloom this year, guess what? It overwintered and it bloomed next year. So it's really cool like that, and it's got some great color. Also, what about in the fall? Okay, I mentioned before when they first put in the addition, the multi-purpose room, they had some nice shrubs and a few native plants. Well, the native plants mostly got squashed, but the shrubs. This is hazelnut on the left. Beautiful fall colors. Who knew, huh? They never tell you, hey, you should plant some hazelnut. And the nice thing about hazelnut is when it starts to get too big, it's getting big, you know what? Just cut it off of the ground. Most native shrubs, that is how you tend to them. Instead of just pruning them up at the top, prune them off of the ground in spring before they budded out, and then all that energy stored up in the roots will come right back up. That's basically simulating a fire, which is what in nature would have happened, or maybe a beaver would have come through and like chewed them off.
Do you have any of your fire pictures here?
I didn't bring any fire pictures here.
He works for the prairie. He helps tame prairies by working real fires.
So yeah, part of what I do in my day job is I work with prescribed fire. Previously, I'd done a lot of work in the Chicago Park District as a contractor there. So think about Horner Park in the natural area along the river. I've burned that several times. And I currently volunteer a lot at Clark Park, where we're wanting to do more native planting there. It's just a matter of, like everything, just the money.
Has anybody here ever ridden your bike in the back by all the jumps? behind Clark Park. That's where Eric's done a lot of
Yeah.
work tearing out non-native plants.
Yep, a lot of non-native plants, invasive
Yeah.
species, trying to make that place a very like visible, easy to see through, but also putting in a nature play space there, so it can be, you know, lots of fun. Nature always fights back, or if you want to put it into the terms of a battle, there's a bunny. Me and the bunnies, we have this love-hate relationship because it's really cool. I remember Ms. Miller telling me one time, oh my gosh, it was so exciting. We were sitting inside at lunch and we were looking out the window at the mama and the baby bunnies playing around outside in the garden. And I'm like, that's why I don't have any purple prairie clover anymore.
Well, they've eaten almost all of what you planted in, like a lot.
Oh.
They have special favorites.
Oh, they have favorites. They do.
They will
Yeah.
eat, but I can't get mad at the bunnies.
Yeah, and that's
There's so little for them to eat.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, you don't get upset at it. It's like it's part of the cycle, and every now and again you see a hawk hanging around the neighborhood, and then you don't see your bunnies anymore. So, you know, it all works its way through.
It's nature's cycle.
Yeah. So, and selfishly, what I really wanted was to have this as a graduation spot. So in 2021, when during the pandemic, when they did graduation outside, we were so happy that this garden was the backdrop for part of the graduation ceremony. And it just made my heart warm that we had dragonflies flying up and down the aisles, searching out the mosquitoes from all the parents that were out on the south lot in their little 10-foot by 10-foot square.
Yeah.
So-
This summer, my sister had so many dragonflies in her backyard, and then we found out they'd left a big bucket filled with lots of larvae of mosquitoes. So if you ever wonder why there's lots of dragonflies in your yard, check and find out where the mosquitoes are going for. Can we save questions for Eric
Yep.
after Daniel's done? And can we say thank you to Eric?